Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Business Podcast, your source for all things business. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, today I have Nicolas Gallo on the line. He's Chief Servant and Co-CEO over at Compliance Line. Nick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adam, thanks for having me, man. Glad to be here.
All right, Nick, so I'm excited to get into today's topic. So we're going to talk about putting people first in the workplace. But before we get into that, let's go a little bit further into what you're doing over at Compliance Line. So tell us a little bit more about your company, please.
Yeah, thank you. So Compliance Line is a provider of corporate integrity products. So we have a number of different solutions that help organizations, large organizations and multinational organizations provide tools to reduce the risk and reinforce their culture. So what does all that mean? So we have, a case management solution that allows people to call in and speak up about Me2 issues or harassment or bullying or just whatever, kind of compliance problems might be happening within the workplace so that the company can, follow up on those things and close the loop and extinguish those risks. We have, interactive compliance training that's like kind of post-Weinstein era. It doesn't look like a 1990s sitcom episode. So those are super engaging that, again, can help to kind of get those behavior changes. And then we have ongoing screening and background checks to make sure that there's no bad apples making their way into the basket that is an organization. So those are kind of the three legs of the Compliance Line stool, and we're just kind of committed to trying to make the world a better workplace from the bottom up.
So, Nick, and that's awesome, and that's why I wanted you on the line for this topic, because I think it's an important one. So, putting people first in the workplace. I mean, to me, when I read this title that was written for us, and I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, that's common sense. But then when I kind of did some thinking and I'm looking back, and I'm like, maybe not all organizations are doing that, and that's not necessarily because they don't want to. Maybe some just don't exactly know what that looks like. So, big topic, putting people first in the workplace. Where do you want to start with this one?
I think we'll start with where we're at. And I think what you said is exactly right. I think very few CEOs are going to say, well, yeah, people are, very, very, very few people are going to say, well, yeah, people are not my greatest asset. Right? Say, yeah, of course people are my greatest asset. But like when you look at the actual behaviors, when you look at the way things are prioritized, it becomes very clear that there's still all these holdovers from not only the Industrial Revolution, but maybe even prior to that of people as labor units. So my point in that, what's rooted in what I'm talking about, is the fact that just by definition, the word priority, there's only one slot for that thing. So what is that top thing? What is that thing that fills that slot? Is it people? Great. Well, then you're going to organize your entire operation around that thing. Or is it money? In which case, you're going to obviously put people subservient to that. So the broad point is, I think what this leads to is that in order to truly believe this thing that, you can put people first in business, you have to actually sort of have digested and actually believe that money is an output of a system. It's not an input of a system. So we often tend to focus on the outcome of something, when many times that outcome is not something that you can directly control. What we can control are the inputs that go into whatever it is we're talking about. So I'm just saying that in this case, especially in the economy that we're in now, especially in the age that we're in now, which this is not a manufacturing economy anymore. This is a knowledge work economy where humans are truly, potentially our greatest assets. the organizations over this next decade that are able to recognize that money is an output, that can recognize that, man, I really need to activate and animate the human beings that are inside of my organization and cut them loose, both with the guidance and with the inclusivity of an authentic culture to really help us pursue our mission. Those are the organizations that are really going to accelerate and separate from everybody else. And what's the sort of paradoxical thing is by focusing on the inputs, focusing on the people, focusing on the culture, focusing on the values, and actually living out something that's authentic will generate that output that everybody else is sort of overly focused on. Does that make sense?
So, Nick, one of the things that I like to drill down to, and I mean, obviously there's so much that I don't want to oversimplify this, and there's only so much we could do on a 15-minute, podcast episode. If we have 15 hours, we couldn't unpack all this. I mean, this stuff's complex, and we're working with humans, so we know we're all complex. We get it. I'll blame it on the prefrontal cortex. That's what I blame everything on. But I do like to provide little tidbit or something that's actionable. So even if it's not, obviously there's no silver bullet, there's nothing like that, but even if it's just a way that CEOs or other organization leaders can start reframing their thinking, like where does somebody start going down this path?
I love that, man. I think you start by recognizing what you can affect, and I think you start by recognizing what you actually have control and influence over, and it's usually a lot less than we might kind of think on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
So our culture, our organizational culture, whether you're working in a 50-person company or a 500,000-person company, is really a collection of a bunch of individuals and really a kind of a collage of a bunch of little individual cultures. So the place to start is with yourself. The place to start is in your own little piece of the world that you're interacting in. Start exhibiting that authentic leadership. Start exhibiting those authentic leadership characteristics, and start to see how that transforms your little culture that you're most apt to change. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about leading with vulnerability. I'm talking about leading with some authenticity. I'm talking about avoiding this tendency that many of us have as we step into a workplace, which seems to dehumanize us, where we kind of put on this carapace of professionalism, and we're not actually real, and we're not actually authentic, and we're scared of sharing what it is we're scared of. We're scared of sharing what it is we're insecure about, and so forth. But all those things are part and parcel to authentic relationships that exist outside of the workplace. And I'm just saying, bringing some of that authenticity into the workplace is like a crazy catalyst that creates so much sort of interpersonal leverage and psychological safety that leads to all these other things that we're looking for: more productivity, less risk, more, profits. All the things that, businesses are sort of designed at some level to pursue can really be accelerated toward by unleashing the humans to pursue those in sort of an organic way. But that is always precursed by sort of an authentic interaction with leadership that provides that safety for someone to really kind of let their hair down and be themselves.
That's awesome, Nick. And I know we're barely scratching the surface on this one, but we're about out of time on this episode. And so what I do want to do, though, is I know you piqued my interest, so I know there's some others listening that their interest is piqued also, and they're like, I want them. They're looking to make a commitment towards what it looks like to take their organization and put people first, really. So that being said, final question, two-part question. Number one, what are typically the types of individuals and or organizations that are a good fit to work with you and your team over at Compliance Line? Question number one. And then question number two, what's the best way for them to follow up?
Great. Thank you for that. So, we really work well with people, with smart people who care. So there are smart people who care at small organizations and large organizations. And we also work really well with folks who, when I talk about this stuff, their eyes don't glaze over. When I talk about this stuff, if it, resonates with them and they understand that, yes, there's something lacking right now and there's something we can do to sort of, improve our culture and really sort of start to crowdsource our risk management of this complex organization, or somebody who's really been burned by a vendor who's really sort of profits over everything. Those are the people who really work best with us because we can really collaborate well. And in terms of people trying to find us, you can find us on LinkedIn, the company's Compliance Line. You can find me on LinkedIn, or just go to complianceline.com. And, whether you're our client or not, our mandate is to make the world a better workplace. So we help folks, clients or not, all the time, get ready for board meetings, brainstorm, outreach, awareness, things like that. Anything we can do to help make the workplace better. It just has such cascading effects across our entire economy and really across our world.
Fantastic. Well, Nick, really appreciate you coming on the show today and talking more about your background, all the great stuff you're doing over at Compliance Sign, and really giving us some things as all the leaders out there listening, some things to really think about and kind of digest and figure out how things work in their organizations. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, especially if you're a first-time listener. We'd love for you to be a return listener and to keep on and tuning in. We have a lot more great guests coming up for you. Do not want you to miss those. So, again, hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Business, definitely hit the subscribe button there. But also, leave us some comments in that video. Love to know what kind of projects and other things that you're working on. Love to connect with you in that YouTube community. And, Nick, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, man.